Tonight, a senior Hamas official confirms his group is in direct talks with the White House and that he believes President Trump can bring peace to Gaza. After more than 100 deaths in 24 hours, Hamas told me they would release all hostages and step back from government if there's a complete end to the war.
President Trump has the capability and the will to reach this peaceful situation.
Also tonight, not serious about peace, the accusation directed at Russia by Ukraine's president as Vladimir Putin refuses to attend talks in Turkey.
President Zelensky, Sky News, do you have a message for Vladimir Putin?
I'm here. I think this is very clear message.
The Indian government alleged that this is a terror base. What do you say to that?
I am the leader of this mosque. I am not a terrorist.
We go inside the region at the heart of the conflict between two nuclear neighbors and hear from those caught up in the attacks.
I want to say to India, whatever your issues, we need to sit down and resolve it.
Plus, as Donald Trump prepares to leave the Middle East, we ask, what has he actually achieved? That's all coming up on The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Good evening from Doha. I'm Yalda Hakim, and it's here in Doha where, for the first time, a senior Hamas leader has confirmed that the group is holding direct talks with the White House. As Israel continues to bombard Gaza, killing more than 100 people overnight, Hamas appears to be putting their trust in Donald Trump. He's touring the Middle East right now and has made no big push for peace. But speaking to me exclusively, Dr. Bassem Naim said he believed the US president had the capability and the will to pressure Israel into brokering a deal. And he said Hamas senior leadership were willing to step back from government and release all hostages if there is a complete end to the war. He was unwilling, though, to commit to laying down arms. In a moment, we'll show you the terror and grief in Gaza as attacks intensify, and we'll hear the response from the White House. But first, just have a listen to my conversation with Dr. Bassem Naim. Are you willing to hand over all the hostages to bring an end to the bloodshed?
We have said it for all the mediators and for the Americans. We are ready to hand over all the prisoners immediately if we can be sure that this will lead to an end of this war, and first and foremost to allow the humanitarian aid to get into Gaza. If these two conditions are fulfilled, again, to allow aid to get into Gaza and to reach an end, to guarantee an end of this war or genocide, yes, we are ready to hand over all the prisoners.
Are you telling the Americans this directly now?
Yes.
What are you saying to them? That these are the things that you want? And are you getting, or do you get a sense that you're getting a positive response from them?
We have told them this proposal or comprehensive approach, one-shot prisoner exchange, ending the war, total withdrawal of the Israeli forces, allowing all the aid to get into Gaza, and rebuilding of Gaza Strip without forceful immigration, through the mediators and directly through some persons in the U.S. administrations. Sometimes we received a positive response. In other cases, I don't know why, but maybe under the pressure of the Zionist lobby in the American administration, we got more or less negative response.
So even today, President Trump has said the following, that he would like to see the United States take Gaza. He's said this multiple times now, to provide safety for Palestinians, maybe in Gaza, maybe outside of Gaza, and that Hamas needs to be dealt with. Is this the message that those who are talking to you at the moment from within the administration are conveying back to you?
I think, first of all, Gaza is belonging to the Palestinians. And Palestinians is the only party who can decide for Gaza and for the future of Gazans. No one, neither in the region or outside the region, who can decide for the Palestinians what to do or what not to do. And we believe in our homeland, and we are committed to this homeland, and we are ready to pay all the prices to defend our homeland and to also to build a better future for our children on our way. We are not in a market to sell Gaza or not to sell Gaza.
We're seeing demonstrations in Gaza. We're seeing people frustrated after 19 months of conflict that Hamas has brought on them.
Yes, yes, I respect all people who are going to the street to say yes for Hamas or no for Hamas, because we have seen half of the Israeli population in the streets against Netanyahu. We are still seeing hundreds of thousands of people demonstrating against Trump president. We don't see that we are representing all Palestinians. We believe that we are still representing a vast majority of Palestinians.
But if we go to the heart and the core of what has caused this latest devastation on the Palestinian people 19, 20 months ago...
The occupation since 75 years is the cause of all this devastation.
But October 7 of this current devastation,
it is not October 7.
60,000 people dead as a result of October 7.
Because we have October 6, a lot of Palestinians were killed. We have before October 6...
60,000 people in the space of 20 months.
Okay, between 2000 and 2023...
And that is because of October 7. And the Israelis say they will not stop until their hostages are released, until Hamas disarms itself and says that it no longer wishes to be the governing power.
Why not? First of all, again, as occupied people, we have all the right to resist the occupation by all means, including armed resistance.
So you won't disarm?
Let me continue. If you ask someone to be disarmed, it has to be the Israelis who have all the power, the chemical power, the nuclear power, the biological power, and all the support from the West, including the Americans, to destroy the Palestinian life, like what we have seen along the 17 months.
That you still have 50 or so of their hostages that you haven't released, and it is in your gift, it is in your power to release them. If Hamas hands the hostages over, if they disarm and they, basically disappear from Gaza, they will end this conflict. Is that something that Hamas is willing to do?
We are ready to go for one session to release all the captured Israelis and in return to get some of our prisoners, but with the guarantees that we are going to reach an end of this war, total withdrawal of the Israeli forces.
If the Americans ask you to disarm, step away from power, you are willing to do this tomorrow, including handing over all of the hostages?
To hand over the government in the Gaza Strip, we have said it already months before, that we are ready to go for any solution accepted by all Palestinians and to hand over the...
But if the Americans ask you?
Even, we have also told the Americans, we are ready to hand over the government immediately if we reach an end of this war. And we have accepted, by the way, the Egyptian proposal, which is talking about forming a Palestinian and independent, non-affiliated body, politically not an affiliated body, to run Gaza Strip. But when it comes to disarmament, I think, yes, we are ready to be disarmed. In one case, we have our independent, self-sovereign state. If we can get it peacefully, politically, based on international rules and regulations and law, yes, we are ready to do it. But again, this will happen only when we have our independent, self-sovereign state. Before that, as long as we are still occupied people, we have all the right to continue defending our people and resisting the occupation with all means, including armed resistance.
Do you have faith in the American teams and delegation that you're talking to, that they too want to achieve an end to the conflict and be able to negotiate between the two sides?
Look, we believe that President Trump has done a lot of work and hard work in different areas in this region and outside the region. We have seen it in Ukraine, we have seen it in Syria, we have seen it in Yemen. And by adopting negotiations with Iran to solve this conflict, to de-escalate the tensions everywhere and to reach a more peaceful world. I think this is what is motivating us to continue contacting the American administration, regardless of the team, because we believe that he has done it and he can do it. And I think President Trump has the capability and the will to reach this peaceful situation.
That That was Dr. Bassem Naim, head of international and political relations for Hamas, laying out what his group's leadership would be willing to do to end this war. But even as he made his offer, the IDF is warning it would look to fully occupy the Strip after President Trump leaves the Middle East. It's an ominous sign for Gazans on the day another 103 people were killed, according to the Civil Defense Agency there. Our Middle East correspondent Alistair Bunkle has this report.
Some of the airstrikes in Gaza are so enormous now, they can be seen from miles away. This was northern Gaza this morning. Closer to the impact, there was panic. And who could be expected to survive this? Anyone close by wouldn't have stood a chance. This was a medical clinic, is now barely standing, and certainly cannot function again. A mosque close by was also hit. Carefully, the paramedics carry the dead down to the street below. Down there, a scorched leg, blown off in the blast, is wrapped into the brown blanket, and they search through the debris for more body parts. In Gaza, there is little dignity left now in life or death. 13 people were killed here, health officials say. In all, more than 100 have been killed across Gaza today alone.
You see what's happened. There is no resistance here. There is none of that here. This is a clinic that provides treatment for those who need it. There was only a group of ill and injured people waiting to get treated. We were surprised by the Israeli airstrike that in one moment covered us in rubble. People died and some lived. Most of the people in this square around me were killed. I don't think any of them are alive.
They hoped Donald Trump's visit to the Middle East this week would finally bring them some respite. That's looking unlikely now. Instead, Israel's military operations are getting even more intense. The Palestinian death toll in 19 months of war, today, passed 53,000. Alistair Bunkle, Sky News, in Jerusalem.
Let's bring in our Mark Stone, who joins me here live now. And Mark, it really has been quite a split screen, hasn't it? The situation in Gaza, of course, and then the lavish welcome that President Trump has been getting. But I just want to take you back to my interview with the Hamas official who said, look, we're willing to release the hostages, and we're willing to end this conflict. We just need Donald Trump to deliver for us.
One of the big unanswered questions this week is the extent to which, behind all this pomp that we've seen, behind the gold and the palaces and all the welcomes in these three capitals, how much discussion has gone on about geopolitics, about Gaza, about what we just saw in Ali's reports. And it's been hard to know. In the week gone by, I've spoken to Middle Eastern diplomats who've said, you often hear that we, the Saudis, don't care about the Palestinians. We do, and we will be putting pressure on behind the scenes. And the other question, to the extent to which the Americans are actually directly talking to Hamas. And you got the answer to that today. They are talking directly to Hamas. That is remarkable, and it shows that behind the scenes there is work being done. But what difference is it making? It appears not a great deal. We put your interview, we sent your interview to the White House to get a response from them to what appeared to be kind of praise for Donald Trump from Hamas. And I think the reason they did that is because they know that he reacts well to flattery. They hope maybe that they can split him further away from the Israelis. The response from the White House, from the National Security Council spokesperson James Hewitt, is that Hamas has not demonstrated they are serious about peace, and the president has been clear. Hamas must lay down their arms. Hamas continues to wrongfully hold hostages, including American bodies, in dungeons in Gaza, who can easily be freed and have shown no changes in behaviour to indicate they will cease to attack civilians. To me, that feels kind of like a holding statement. They haven't deviated from Donald Trump's position on Gaza, which hasn't shifted. His position on other issues, on Iran, where there's an olive branch apparently, on Syria, where there is a handshake with the former jihadi, now turned president, his position on Gaza hasn't appeared to shift at the moment. Maybe it's just all too complicated for him. He doesn't know who he can engage with. He can engage more simply with Iran and with Syria. We've also heard from the I was going to say National Security Advisor. He is the National Security Advisor. He's also the Secretary of State. He's Marco Rubio. He is in Turkey for the talks that haven't happened leader to leader on Ukraine. And he was asked about this issue with Gaza and the talks.
Well, I think anybody that tells you there are obviously messages passed between intermediaries in the case of Hamas. There's obviously an external Hamas group, and then there's an internal Hamas group as well. This is a terrorist organization. This is a murderous group that still continues to hold innocent hostages and the bodies and remains of dead hostages as well. They should all be released immediately. That's been our position from the very beginning. They should never have been taken to begin with. So, again, you know, we continue to, that continues to be our position, and if there's a role we can play in bringing about the release of these hostages and the return of these remains to their families, and we have an opportunity to play a role, we will. I won't comment any further on the mechanics of it because I don't want to endanger them, but suffice it to say that we know there are others involved. The Qataris have been involved, the Egyptians have been involved, the Turks have been involved, numerous countries have been involved in passing messages and in getting results.
The National Security Advisor / Secretary of State Marco Rubio there. Interestingly, Mark, in that statement, he didn't confirm or deny. He talked about intermediaries, but he also talks about the fact that there are two types of Hamas groups, the political wing and, of course, the militant wing in Gaza. Yeah, and the political wing is here, the militant wing, the ones that wear the green bandanas, the balaclavas, and the weapons, and they're the ones that hand over the hostages. They are distinct from the political wing, and even, of course, within Hamas there is a spectrum. Hardliners on one side and the more moderates to an extent on the other side, and Dr. Bassem is a more moderate, is at the more moderate end. So there are lots of different people that they could be talking to. He didn't admit that they're talking to anyone. We know that they are, from your interview and from other sources who say that Steve Witkoff has had conversations as well here. So they are engaging. That is encouraging. But, you know, back to your idea of a split screen, it has been very awkward and, you know, as we said last night, grim in Gaza. Yeah, absolutely. Mark, thank you so much. We'll be talking to you again later on in the programme. Well, let's turn to Ukraine now, and another story making headlines. Today could have been the day when Volodymyr Zelensky and Vladimir Putin met face-to-face to discuss ending the war there. The plan had been for them to meet in Turkey. The Ukrainian president was there, but his Russian counterpart was a no-show. Our international correspondent Alex Rossi reports from the Turkish capital, Ankara.
President Zelensky jetted into the Turkish capital Ankara to show the world he was a man prepared to talk peace, if Russia's leader did the same. But as he arrived, it was clear that it would be a no-show from his nemesis.
President Zelensky, Sky News, do you have a message for Vladimir Putin?
I'm here. I think this is very clear message.
A meeting with President Erdogan was a chance to talk next steps and increase the pressure on the Russians.
How are you? Good.
Consideration too on how to engage with the low-level delegation the Kremlin had sent to Turkey.
By coming to Turkey and effectively daring Vladimir Putin to do the same, President Zelensky is sending a message to the world, and in particular the American administration of Donald Trump, that Ukraine is not the barrier to peace. He's trying to galvanize international opinion around the view that it is Russia that is stalling the peace process.
In Istanbul, amidst high security, the press waited for those talks to get underway, with Ukraine accusing Moscow of not being serious, calling the peace talks team theatrical.
I think that the Kremlin leader should show his leadership. If he's ready for negotiations, let's meet. We can't really run around the world looking for him. I believe the United States and Turkey are currently feeling disrespected by Russia, in my opinion.
The Americans had hoped for much from these talks, but Trump, on a tour of the Middle East, is playing down the lack of success.
Nothing's going to happen until Putin and I get together, okay? And obviously he wasn't going to go. He was going to go, but he thought I was going to go. He wasn't going if I wasn't there. And I don't believe anything's going to happen, whether you like it or not, until he and I get together. But we're going to have to get it solved because too many people are dying.
And at the Kremlin, it was clear there was no sign Putin was feeling the need to get on a plane. His negotiating team in Istanbul talking up the process, but his foreign minister launching this attack.
Zelensky was making some statements demanding that Putin come in person. He is a pathetic man. Everybody understands, except perhaps himself and those who control him. Why is a ceasefire needed? To pump Ukraine up so it can prepare to negotiate from a position of strength.
The failure of the first direct talks in 3 years to make much progress means the conflict and the killing in Ukraine continues. This the site of an attack on the city of Sumy. There is still a flicker of hope that the peace process can gain some momentum, but at the moment the war shows no sign of ending. Alex Rossi, Sky News, Ankara.
Well, let's bring in our Adam Parsons, who joins us live from Istanbul. And Adam, it appears that Volodymyr Zelensky has now left Turkey, but he has left behind his defense minister, Rustem Umerov, and talks are expected to begin tomorrow.
Yeah, that is exactly right. Zelensky has left. He's going to go to the European Political Community meeting tomorrow. But we are now expecting talks to happen tomorrow here in Istanbul through 4 different teams. There will be a Turkish team, an American, a Ukrainian, and a Russian. And what we think is that there will be 2 formats for those talks, that there is an agenda that has apparently been drawn up. Both of those formats involve Ukraine and Turkey delegations being involved. One of them, they will be joined by the United States. One, they will be joined by Russia. Now, if that happens, that will be the first time that the Ukrainians and the Russians have held negotiations in the same place at the same time since the start or the early months of this war back in 2022. And if you remember, those negotiations broke down with both sides blaming the other. The Russians said that the Ukrainians walked away under pressure from the West. The Ukrainians said the Russian demands were completely unacceptable. Now, nobody is expecting a ceasefire to come out of this tomorrow, but there is a hope that it might be the first step in a process that can lead to negotiations about something more substantial.
And Adam, you know, we've heard President Trump say that he wasn't going to go, Vladimir Putin wasn't going to go if I wasn't there. There's now this talk of a potential summit between Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump. He sort of flagged it from the very beginning, but it certainly seems to be emerging again.
Yeah, I think right now Vladimir Putin will be sitting there and I think thinking that his game of chess is probably working out the way he wanted, because he hasn't turned up here and his presence has been felt throughout this process. The brutal truth is that the president who did come, Zelensky, has probably had less impact on these talks than the 2 who didn't, and that is Putin and Trump. Why? Well, in a sense, Zelensky came to take the moral high ground, to say, here I am, I'm prepared to negotiate, not only me, but I've brought out my top team with me, whereas Putin sent pretty much a sort of Z-list cast of politicians and diplomats that barely famous in their own country. And yet, right now, the talk is of a summit between Putin and Trump. That, I think, is what Putin wants. That's what Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, is talking about. It's what Trump is talking about. That will please both of those leaders. They both like being at the heart of it, but it will worry a lot of others. Why? Well, because President Trump is the president of a country thousands of miles from Ukraine, transactional politician who's already talked about Ukraine having to give up land. Putin is the guy who invaded Ukraine in the first place. And what would that summit not involve? Either President Zelensky, the guy whose country was invaded, or the European leaders who are sitting enraged on the sidelines. They've promised, by the way, to take severe sanctions, put severe sanctions in place if there's no deal comes out of here. Well, a deal probably isn't coming. A lot of pressure on the likes of Keir Starmer, Emmanuel Macron, to go big on those promises. How are they going to regain their place at the forefront of this? Or do they simply accept what is beginning to look wearily predictable, that this process will only come to an end, as Donald Trump said, when he and Putin go head-to-head?
Yeah, and as they say, and what the concern mainly is, Adam, is if you're not at the table, you're on the table. Thanks so much for bringing us up to date there. You're watching The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Still to come on the programme. What now for peace efforts after Putin stood up Zelensky? We'll hear from Ukraine's former Vice Prime Minister. And will the ceasefire hold between India and Pakistan? Our Asia correspondent travels into Kashmir amid simmering tensions between the two nuclear-armed neighbours.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party.
I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration.
Sky News, get the full story first.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
A show of military might and menace. Why should the West trust you?
Frankly, I don't care whether the West trusts us or not.
Sky News. Get the full story first.
Have a quick word for Sky News. Is the West right? Are you fueling Russia's war machine? American journalist Evan Gershkovich is on trial here, but was first on display.
I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent.
Welcome back to the programme. I just want to return now to the war in Ukraine. And today, President Volodymyr Zelensky was stood up by Vladimir Putin after inviting the Russian president to join him in Ankara for talks over ending the war. As a result, Mr. Zelensky said Putin was not serious about peace. Well, let's discuss this further. Joining me now is Ivana Klimpush-Tsitsadze, former Vice Prime Minister of Ukraine. Thank you so much, Vice Prime Minister, for joining us here on the program. I just want to get your reaction to everything that has played out over the course of the last few days. President Volodymyr Zelensky saying he would turn up, and he challenged Vladimir Putin. But really, there aren't any real surprises here that Vladimir Putin didn't turn up.
I don't think this is a surprise. I was very skeptical whether he would turn up in Turkey. And the result is already there. And I think that what has happened, that this KGB president of Russian Federation has made it clear that he wants everybody to follow his agenda and his way of understanding what should be discussed, and that is something that he has sent his negotiating team for, because they are claiming that they want to return, quote and unquote, to that peace process, as they are calling it, those negotiations that have been happening in Istanbul at the beginning of the full-scale invasion, where they were insisting on capitulation of Ukraine, on actually Ukraine giving up its sovereign choices and its Western-oriented development. So I don't think that there will be any. Yeah.
I'm just curious to know, how do you think the United States is perceived in all of this? Because Donald Trump encouraged, almost veiled threat to Volodymyr Zelensky, saying you need to accept this offer from Vladimir Putin now. If he's sending a team, you should accept this immediately. Don't waste any time. That's when Volodymyr Zelensky came out and said, I'll go there. Where do you think this leaves Donald Trump now?
I think that if after this round of upcoming conversation, I don't even want to call it negotiation, it won't become clear to the United States of America and current administration in the United States that it is exactly the Russian Federation that shows no sign of readiness for discussing the real end of the war, not to mention the unconditional ceasefire to be implemented, that and if that is left without reaction towards Russia, without pressure on Russia, I think that is just going to show the weakness of the United States to the world, and all the harsh words with regard to or promises, they are not going to substitute any non-action that is coming from the United States administration at this point.
We heard from the Turkish leader Recep Tayyip Erdogan, who said that Crimea, for example, he said it today to Volodymyr Zelensky, is part of Ukrainian territory and not Russian territory. Yet this is something that President Trump, certainly in the last month or so, has said that perhaps President Zelensky needs to accept Crimea is part of Russian territory. How do you think this will play out?
Well, first and foremost, it has to be understood that Crimea is legally, according to our constitution, according to the international law, is part of Ukraine. And I don't think that there is any politician in Ukraine who is ready to give it up in these terms. So if there is a recognition by the United States of America, that I think if there is
pressure from the United States.
Well, I think that sovereign nation cannot be pressured into giving up its sovereign territory, and we can probably obviously see that we cannot regain it militarily, and it would have to come back in a diplomatic, political, economic manner maybe at some later stage. That is probably something that de facto occupation is happening, but de jure, I don't think that anybody would recognize it. And I don't think that the Ukrainian parliament, which I'm part of, is going to have enough votes to actually agree upon that. That requires a change of the constitution, and I don't think we have a constitutional majority to support that.
Ivana, you say that this exposes Vladimir Putin, that he isn't serious about peace and Ukraine is, and yet it appears that perhaps Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump will hold a separate summit where they will meet. Is there concern around this, that perhaps the United States is giving up whatever leverage it may have over Russia, and that Ukraine won't be at the table? It might be the conversation on the table?
So far, we have not seen the new administration really exercising any leverage over Russian Federation. And if it had, I think the result would already be different. So I think it's also a great mistake of actually opening up the international isolation for Putin that was created over this 3 years after their illegal full-scale invasion of Ukraine, an unprovoked one. So I think that that will have a very dire consequences for many other regions, not exclusively for Ukraine or Europe itself.
What do you think the end game is here? I mean, we're hearing from both sides, you know, Volodymyr Zelensky challenging Vladimir Putin sending a very junior delegation, this sort of idea of them talking, going back and forth. How do you think this will ultimately play out?
I understand that Putin is trying to create a smokescreen of negotiations while he believes that he can gain more territory and he can reach his goals in his attack against Ukraine and the free world. And if the partners of Ukraine from the free world will not act on pushing Putin back to the to understanding the consequences of his actions, I think the end game might be drastic for the whole European continent and for many other regions where it might create additional fires and flares of wars and conflicts.
Former Vice Prime Minister of Ukraine, thank you so much for joining us here on the program.
Thank you.
You're watching The World with me, Yalda Hakim, still to come on the program. Don't go anywhere. We've got an inside Kashmir piece. We witnessed the tension still simmering despite the ceasefire agreed between India and Pakistan. Stay with us for that.
we arrive. A secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war. This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's future.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away.
So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
Welcome back to the programme. Let's turn away now from the Middle East to the tensions between Pakistan and India. Tonight, Pakistan's Prime Minister said he was ready to talk about peace between the two nations. Now, a temporary ceasefire cannot erase decades of antagonism. Frustration and bitterness remains on both sides. Sky's Cordelia Lynch has travelled to Muzaffarabad in Pakistan-administered Kashmir, one of the sites of India's recent missile strikes. She sent us this report.
It is a place of wonder that can easily slip into a cradle of despair. A disputed borderland of beauty and trauma that's only just stepped back from the brink of war. We're about to enter Kashmir, at the centre of decades of conflict between India and Pakistan, and at the very heart of recent escalating tensions between the two nuclear neighbours. We're headed to Muzaffarabad in Pakistan-administered Kashmir. We're with the Pakistan Army, visiting a city where few expected India to strike. But it did, wiping out Bilal Mosque, killing 3 people, including Jamil's 82-year-old father, Muhammad. Do you want revenge against India?
We are Muslims. My father was martyred in this attack. That's honor for us. Revenge against India, that's the duty of our armed forces and government, and we have full faith in them.
India has full faith it hit a terror target. Kursid is the imam here. The Indian government alleged that this is a terror base. What do you say to that?
This is an allegation from their side. I have been here for 17 years and everybody knows me. I am the leader of this mosque. You can see I am a normal person. I am not a terrorist.
Nimra was sleeping when the missiles came. She was hit in the chest with shrapnel. What's the future of this conflict? What do you want to see happen with Kashmir?
I think India needs to stop the war. Children like me who were attacked, our education was disturbed. I want to say to India, whatever your issues, we need to sit down and resolve it. Pakistan wants peace and I want Pakistan to talk on the Kashmir issue.
Next door, the local school was also damaged. Thankfully, the children were at home, sleeping. But now they can see just how close danger can be. How do you feel about your school being damaged?
Our school is destroyed. I have so much anger because we study here. Our principal built this school. They built it for us, but India destroyed it.
You can really feel the huge gulf here. Pakistanis are angry, but they're hopeful too. Yet across the mountains, Indians sound defiant, yet frustrated. And part of that frustration is that Donald Trump has made Kashmir an issue again, just when India's leader believes this moment should all be about terrorism. Both sides want to frame the narrative, but there's strongmen, religious nationalism, and modern warfare in the mix. And now, a very fragile truce. Cordelia Lynch, Sky News, Muzaffarabad, in Pakistan-administered Kashmir. You're watching The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Still to come on the programme. Pomp ceremony, deals worth billions, and the gift of a jumbo jet. We look back on Donald Trump's week in the Middle East.
The Premier League run-in is live on USA
USA and streaming on Peacock. Only 2 matches remain.
The climax of the Premier League season.
Friday, exclusively on Peacock. Top 5 hopeful Chelsea host Man United. Sunday on USA. Newcastle continue to fight for Champions League qualification when they visit Arsenal. This is the Premier League run-in. Live on USA and Peacock.
And I'm Sky's senior Ireland correspondent. It takes 60 minutes to cross the Irish Sea. It took the British monarchy a century. I've spent 30 years reporting the journey from conflict to peace.
The political parties of Northern Ireland have reached agreement.
If there's anyone who might know how to fix Northern Ireland's devolved government, it's the American architect.
Changes in circumstance require changes in approach.
The end of the political stalemate, the start of a new chapter for Northern Ireland.
I confirmed that I am willing to take up the office of First Minister. My election to the post of First Minister demonstrates the change that's happening on this island.
Catholics and Protestants on different sides, now facing the same threat.
If we both contract COVID-19 and end up in hospital, religion's nothing.
People here are adept at finding hope amid adversity. That's the spirit of a place that punches way above its weight. We help you understand the world with us. A toxic blue-green algae now poisoning Lough Neagh. It's breaking your heart what has happened here.
It is.
This is a vital resource, a national treasure, now fighting for its very life. They are effectively surrounded by Northern Ireland, and that makes this the most unlikely of international frontiers.
If there's a hard border, I think it'll cripple the country.
Winter is coming. Welcome to Winterfell. It's an iconic location in this globally acclaimed drama. Ophelia was the most powerful hurricane this far east in the Atlantic on record. Sky News, the full story first.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party.
I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Welcome back to the programme. Well, as Donald Trump visited Saudi Arabia, Qatar and the UAE this week, there was no shortage of pomp and ceremony on show. Red carpets were rolled out, state dinners served, and performances were put to welcome him to every venue. Here's a reminder of what we've seen this week.
We're getting a fresh vision of his foreign policy worldview.
The U.S.-Saudi relationship has been a bedrock of security and prosperity. You achieved a modern miracle, the Arabian way. That's a good way.
This has been a trip full of surprises.
How did you find the Syrian president?
Right. I think very good. Young, attractive guy. I have a very good friend on my left. He said, "Do you mind if I invite just a few guests?" I said, "Sure." I didn't know you were going to have 400 people. As a construction person, I'm seeing perfect marble. This is what they call perfecto.
Each of these Gulf Arab countries is trying to outdo the one before.
Let's bring in our US correspondent Mark Stone, who's been with me throughout this week. Mark, I'm just looking at that montage. You really can't overstate how lavish it's all been. It really has just been quite incredible, actually, what they've put on for him.
Yeah, it has. It feels like quite a long week, actually. Riyadh seems like a long time ago. Surprises throughout as well. I mean, I think the key image, the defining image, which was the defining image of the day, but I think it's the defining image of the week, was that moment with the new Syrian president, Ahmed al-Shara. We didn't expect that they would meet, that Donald Trump would meet this man who was aligned to al-Qaeda, was a militant fighter, fought the Americans in Iraq, jailed in Iraq, and now open arms from Donald Trump and lifting of sanctions. That was a remarkable moment. It represented kind of a 180 on what Donald Trump has been saying. Because remember, when Shara overthrew Assad late last year, and through the first 100 days of this presidency, Trump and his officials have been basically saying, Syria's got nothing to do with us. Far away war, far away country, doesn't matter. Everyone said to him, actually, it does matter to America, because if you leave it alone, it will become a failed state, or it'll look back to Iran or wherever else. Now he is saying that, but he's almost forgetting that everyone else said that to him a while ago. So a remarkable turnaround there. That was a big moment, I think, and represented a shift in America's foreign policy.
Yeah, very much so. As you say, I mean, who would have thought an al-Qaeda militant turned rebel leader, turned nationalist, now president of Syria, having 30 minutes with the US president? If you said it 6 months ago, we wouldn't have believed it. And then, of course...
Well, if you'd said it 5 days ago to Sebastian Gorka, who is the counter-terror head in the White House, he was literally saying on television that the Syrian president is a terrorist, is an Islamist, and then his boss goes 3 days later and meets him. I mean, that gives you a sense of the divisions within the White House, and I think it is true that people within the White House, within the administration, would have been looking at that. They wouldn't have realised it was going to happen. Trump operates in a very, very, very tight circle.
Yeah, very much so. And he clearly listens to Mohammed bin Salman, the Turkish president as well, who he said encouraged him to do it. So from that kind of thing happening in Riyadh, the sort of momentous historic speech that he gave as well about geopolitics, he made his way here to Doha, and we saw, again, big deals, big investments, trillions of dollars.
Yeah, and here, clearly, behind the scenes, the questions were the extent to which people were focusing on Gaza, because the split screen, as we've said, was in a bad 2 years in Gaza. This was a particularly bad week. We began the week with a huge amount of hope, the release of a hostage, and there was a momentum. The vibe was that the Americans, even without the Israelis' input, were managing to make some progress. But the week has ended with a terrible, terrible day in Gaza. News, as you got today, that they are talking to Hamas, but what difference is it making? But the Qataris, and actually all these Gulf Arab countries, they know what buttons to push, don't they? Whether it is the Cybertruck police cars that escorted the presidential motorcade, or the lavish gold in all the palaces. He has loved every moment of this.
Yeah, absolutely. As you say, he is in his comfort zone. He knows what he's dealing with. We are seeing that sort of transactional style of foreign policy where he is saying, if you've got lots of cash, Washington is going to sit up and listen. And I guess also, Mark, we just talked about Gaza. He's a stone throw away from Israel. It was never on the cards that he would go. And we're hearing about this sort of frosty relationship with Benjamin Netanyahu, who, by the way, the Israelis have advised him at every twist and turn, don't recognize Shara, don't lift the sanctions, don't deal with Iran. And he's done exactly the opposite.
In Tel Aviv and in Jerusalem, they must have been throwing things at the televisions. Not only are they not here, and there is a world in which, go back several years, change a whole load of stuff, and you could have had Netanyahu here as well. He wasn't here. Not only was he not here, but Trump did all those deals, had all those handshakes that you describe, olive branch to Iran. But he also signed tech deals and green energy deals with Gulf Arabs. This is precisely the sort of industry that Israel thrives at. They must have been spitting.
Yeah, absolutely, Mark. Thank you so much. And we have had such an intense week. As you say, Riyadh, Saudi Arabia feels like such a long time ago. But the president tomorrow will leave the United Arab Emirates. He was, we thought, maybe going to turn up in Turkey. And we saw the Ukraine-Russia situation and the way that it has developed. But we will be following the news and developments there. But from me and the world team and our team here in Doha, good night.